So we are all welcome to our Python class day two. In our first meeting, which we did day before yesterday, day one, we introduced some basic concepts in Python programming, which I spoke about variables, data type, and then I just showed us some little examples on how to use them. I said variables are like containers that store values, or they are like container that hold something that you can later use in your program. So instead of maybe you want to store a number like 25. So instead of you to write 25, you can call that 25. You can say age, or you can say number one, or you can say number two, anything. But whenever you want to talk about 25, you don't need to go and be writing 25. You will just reference or call that name that you've assigned to 25. Like in the case of the example we did, which we assigned 25 to the variable called name. So anytime we want to use 25, we don't need to go and be writing 25. The moment we just write out each, it knows we are referring to 25. If we want to use the name Alice, the moment we write name, it knows we are referring to Alice. And I said, how can you define a variable, or how do you create a variable? In order for you to create a variable, you first of all write the name that you want to give your variable, followed by an equal to sign. If you didn't put an equal to sign, it means you are not creating a variable. So that equal to sign is very important to make it a variable. So the moment you write the name you want your variable to be, you write equal.
Sorry, please.
Okay.
Sorry, please. I don't know. Your screen, like, as if it's no longer showing again. No?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, yeah, I think it stopped. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yeah, I can see it now.
Okay. All right. So back to what I'm saying. I said in our class day one, we spoke about variables, and then I introduced what variables are. I said variables are container that are used to store another value. So in order for you to create a variable, you write the name that you want to give your variable, followed by an equal to sign before the value that you want that variable to hold. And I gave instance with this age. We said age, that's the name we want to give our variable, then followed by equal to, then 25. So anytime we want to talk about 25, we don't write 25. The moment we write age, it knows we are making reference to 25. So the same thing applies to Alice. If we want to write Alice, we don't need to be writing Alice, because already we've assigned this variable name called name to be Alice. So anytime we want to make reference to Alice, we don't need to go and start writing Alice from scratch. The moment we write name, it knows we are referring to Alice. So, and those were the things we discussed. And the another important thing we discussed was, I said, if you want to assign a variable, you have to be very careful. Never you start your variable with a number. I emphasized on that. I said you can start it with a letter, and then you can end it with a number. But never you start your variable with a number before a letter. It won't work that way. So that was the first thing we discussed. Then we went ahead to discuss data types. We said data types are type of data. And I said we have specifically four types of data. The number data, data that are numbered, they are divided into two. We have what we call integer, and we have what we call float. I said integers are whole numbers. For example, 10, 3, all these are integers. Why? Because they don't have decimal points. So any data type that doesn't have decimal point is called an integer. While those that have decimal point, that is a number that has a decimal point, we don't call it integer, we call it float. It's a floating number, so we call it float. Those were the first two data types we spoke about, which we said they are numeric or number data type. Then the next data type we talk about is the string. I say string is a collection of letters. Maybe if I have letter A, B, C, or letter D, E, F, or name of somebody, something like this. Since they are collections of letters, these are what we call string. And I said in Python programming, any string, not in Python programming generally, any string you write, as long as it is only variable that is allowed to be a string without quotation mark. But as long as it is just a normal string, you must put it in quotation mark, whether single quotation mark or double quotation mark. Like this one I put here, this is what we call double quotation mark. Then simple quotation mark is the one that have just one stroke. So this one I embedded it in a single quotation mark, while this one I embedded it in a double quotation mark. So Python allows you to use both single and double. Anyone, it doesn't matter. But as long as you are defining a string, ensure you put it in quotation mark. And then the last data type we spoke about was the Boolean data type. And the Boolean data type, we said, is a data type that has only two values. Whenever you are referring to something, a Boolean data type wants you to represent that thing either as true or as false. That's the only thing that the Boolean data type recognize. So that's a little recap of what we did that is. Then I showed us some examples on how to use our variables. I assigned some variables and then I gave them a particular operation to do. That's like what the value they are to store, and then we printed them out. This is also more on variables examples. And then we started a control structure before the meeting ended impromptu. And then I said today I'll continue from control structure also. So I think that's a little recap of what we did the other day. So this is the file we'll be looking at today. So basically our outline for today are four. We'll be looking at control structures, we'll look at data structures, we'll look at functions, and then we'll come to data manipulation. Data manipulation, they are in two. So for today, we'll look at data manipulation 1, and then next week, Friday, we'll be looking at data manipulation 2. So these are basically our outlines for today's class. So I believe I've shared this file to the group. I shared this file already to the group. So I'm going to, since I've shared the file to you, I'm going to guide you on how to upload the file on your Google Colab, since I always emphasize on us using Google Colab. So although after the class, the recording will be shared, so you can, if maybe you didn't capture the guide now, even after everything, by tomorrow, once I post the video on YouTube, you can check it out so that you can follow the whole step to upload it on your Google Colab also. So the first thing for us to do is to navigate to Google Colab. Then you click on your enter. I believe my screen is still clear and I'm audible, right?
Yes, yes.
All right. Thank you. So let's proceed. So let's Google Colab load up. Okay, Google Colab has loaded up. So that file that I sent to the group, once you've downloaded it to your system or to your mobile phone, I said always track of the folder you downloaded it to or the place you save it to. So always keep track of that because you need to upload it to your Google Colab environment. So to upload, I say you click on upload, you click on browse, and then you navigate to that folder. I stored my here. So this is it. Open. So you allow the file to load up and then display. Okay, so the file is up, it has been uploaded. So the first thing we'll do, we need to connect here. I told you if this Google Colab haven't shown connected, it means it's not yet connected. So you have to click on it and allow it to connect. Okay, so it's connected. As long as they are shown this RAM and disk, I told you they'll give you access to online properties to use. So without much wasting of time, let's commence. Now control structure. If you remember that day I was explaining, I said we have three control structure generally. they allow you to make decision or to do something very important. Please, a minute, please. Just 1 minute. Hi, who is there? Enter, I'm busy. You are just busy not interfering what I'm doing. Enter, enter, enter. Okay, so sorry about that. All right, back to what I was saying. I said in our first class, I was saying we have basically two types of control structures. Though I didn't mention the two that I only mentioned one. I said the one we'll be looking at is called selection. And then I said, what is the selection control structure? A selection control structure is a control structure that allows you to make choice from available options that you have. That's what we call the selection control structure. And I said the selection control structure is divided into three. We have the if statement, that is if your choices, that is what you want to select from, which we usually call condition in programming. If your condition is just one, you make use of the if statement. If your condition is more than one, if it's exactly two, you make use of the if else statement. And then if your condition is more than two, we make use of the if else statement. Then the second control structure we'll be looking at is called loop. It's called loop. So once we get there, we'll talk about that. So now let's dwell our attention on the first control structure, which is selection. This one I put here is just a pictorial representation of the control structure of the if else statement and the if else statement, but with examples you understand better. Now, back to our example. That day I was making an example with temperature, and I said if you have just one condition, you make use of the if statement only. But if you have more than one condition, you make use of the if else statement. And then for the if statement now, I said in that statement, you have just one choice to make. You have just a single choice to make. Now, for instance, now, you are being given temperature to be equal to 30. We are given a temperature to be equal to 30. And then you are told that you are to check that temperature and ensure you print the day is hot only if the temperature given to you is above 25. That is the condition given to you. You are told that you are just to print the temperature is hot. It's just like, for instance, you are trying to, a practical example, let's say there are some Android phones, like my phone at times, it do that. I don't know of other phones. I believe even iPhone does that. Maybe if you are using it, if you are operating, if the temperature is too high, it will indicate. It will tell you the temperature is too high. Let's assume. Okay, let me just change the condition. Let me say, okay, no, let's just leave this one as 30, and then let's change the condition. Let's assume is the temperature of your phone we are trying to check, and then let's say if the temperature. Let's assume when they were building the phone, they set it that if the temperature of the phone hits above 35, it should signal that your phone is too hot. Let me change this condition. It's too hot. Let's assume this is the condition. You are told that your phone should only signify a person that the temperature of his phone is high if the temperature is above 35. But when the temperature is normal, that is below 35, it shouldn't give any signal. That kind of scenario is a typical example of one condition scenario, because once the temperature is below, it will not tell you anything because it assumes the temperature is normal. But the moment the temperature is above 35, it will detect there is an issue. This temperature is not normal. So let me signify the person. Like if you are using your phone, maybe camera, and then the temperature is above 35, at times the camera will not work. It will tell you that the phone needs to cool, that the phone is above, is too hot. Although at times although there are some that will show you, they will tell you maybe it's above 35 degree or maybe 50 degrees, something like that. It's just an illustration. So that kind of situation is a one condition situation. And those are the kind of situation where you use just the if statement to write your code. So this is the condition I give. Let's forget about what is here first. Let me delete this. Let's assume I gave you a statement. I said check if the temperature is above 35, print the phone is too hot. So this is that statement I made. This is the illustration in code. In order for you to use it, you need to first of all write your if statement and then write that thing that you want to check. That is the condition given to you. And what is the condition given to you? The condition given to us was if temperature is greater than 35, we are to print the phone is too hot. And then if you recall that day I spoke about indentation. I told you if you are using system, Python allows indentation and uses indentation whenever you are working with control structures. And I told you the moment you write if temperature is greater than 35, you have to end it with these two dot dots. You have to. The moment you put these two dot dots, it's trying to tell the program that this thing I'm about to write is a control structure. So it will automatically prompt himself to create an indentation for you. So, but if I should end it like this, if I should click enter, you see it went to another line. That is because I didn't write that two dot dot here. So that dot dot is very important whenever you are using a control structure. Even when we get to loop, you see that I use that. So as long as it's a control structure you are using, immediately you finish your condition, always end it with dot dot. Whether single condition, double condition, more than two condition, you must end it with dot dot. Why? Because you are trying to create an awareness for the program that what I'm writing is a condition. So the moment I click enter, to write my next line of code, you see it automatically creates an indentation for me. The phone is too hot. Now let me show you something. After that, we've written the condition now, right? So now it's time for us to check our condition. So let's call our temperature now. Let's give it a value. Okay, let me assume our temperature is 60. Now look at something. I wrote temperature beneath, right? If I should run this program, it will raise an error. Already, I know it will raise an error because if you look at temperature, is highlighted here. Why is it highlighted? It's highlighted because this variable which because remember I told you variable is a group of um, strings that you write without it being in a quotation mark. If this is in a quotation mark, it will not raise, you will not see that underline. You see, it's changed because this a string, not a variable. And whenever you are writing a condition, you only make use of variable. That is, if you are using control structures, if you want to write a condition for your control structure to check, it has to be a variable that you make use. Now, if you see, underline when I wrote, it underlined the variable. Why is it underlining the variable? It's underlining the variable because it was unable to see where you define that variable. What do you mean by variable definition? If I should say age is equal to 25, it means I am defining age. That is, defining a variable means you are giving that variable a value, whether a string or a boolean or a floating number or an integer. That's what we call variable definition. So if I should say what is variable definition? Variable definition simply means giving value to a variable. So if you check, before I started this statement, I didn't give temperature a variable, a name up. I didn't create any variable called temperature up. I went down. And in Python programming, there is no way, in fact, not just in Python, almost every programming language, there's no way you can make reference to a variable. That is, there's no way you can write out the name of a variable without you defining it. So you have to define a variable first before you can talk about that variable. So always be careful whenever you are coding, ensure any variable you want to talk about, it is being defined up. So temperature, I need to define it. So let's give it a value 40. So if I should give my temperature, now you will see that okay, sorry, I missed the letter here. Now, you see that immediately I wrote the name, now that underline has disappeared completely. You see that that underline has disappeared completely. Why? Because it was able to see a variable that I defined up here. It will see that you have defined a variable up here. So now let's run it and see. Now if you check, 40 is above 25. Okay, let me use a temperature that is normal. Let's assume the temperature of my phone is 25 and I'm using it. If I should run it, nothing will appear. Why? Because my phone is in a normal condition. But let's assume the temperature is now higher than 35. The temperature of my phone increased to 35. If I should run it, you will see it told me the phone is too hot. Why? Because it has met the condition that I created here. So that is a typical example of a one condition problem. Now, second example on how to use if else. Remember, I said if else is only when you have just two condition, condition A and condition B, where condition B is the opposite of condition A. Let me repeat. Let me say here you have just two conditions, A and B, where B is the opposite, of A. In if else statement, we have just two conditions, condition A and condition B, where B is the opposite of condition A. Now let's explain. That day I told you if you define your condition up here, the else statement automatically carries the opposite. It auto carries the opposite of what you've defined. It auto carry the opposite of what you've defined in the if statement. Remember, I told you if you are writing condition else, you don't give else a condition. It automatically carries the opposite. So else doesn't have a condition. You don't need to write a condition for else. So it is only if. So let me write out the structure here. So whenever you're working with if statement, here is your if statement. In brackets, you need to write your condition, then quotation mark, then here print whatever you want to print. Whatever you want to print, or whatever you want your program to do. So this is the structure. Remember, this has to be in quotation mark. Not shall not always. It must have to be in quotation mark. But for practice sake, let me put it in quotation mark. So this is the structure. The statement, it doesn't have any condition. The only thing it has is this quotation mark, and then down you write the condition that you want it to write out. So this is the structure for if else statement. If statement, it is the one that carries the condition. Else auto carries the opposite of whatever condition you wrote here. So the same way we did for the first one, I'm coming. Let me change this to markdown. Sorry. Okay, let me just return it to PA. Okay, so I just change it to be a comment, so that comment is anything that you cannot, it is just there to guide you, so it cannot be executed. Because if I didn't change it to comment and I try to run this cell, it will create a problem for us. So that's how I had to comment it. So back to the example I'm talking about. Okay, let me leave the condition I gave. I say here you have just two conditions, A and B, where B is the opposite of condition A, where B is the opposite of condition A. So now back to here. Now, if you look at this program, what I want you to do here is I want you to create, maybe you are trying to create a software, and what the software does is the software always check, okay, let me a practical example. Let me say you are trying to create a voters card, a system, a voting system that only allows adults to vote. A voting system that allows only adults to vote. Now, and you know the default adulthood age is 18 years. So if you are up to 18 years, your program will allow you to vote. Then if you are lesser than 18 years, the system you are building should not allow you to vote. Rather, it should tell you you are a minor, so you are not supposed to vote. Something like that. So in order for you to create that program, in this kind of situation, you see you have two conditions. The first condition is if the person is greater than 18 years, allow him to vote. But if the person is not up to 18 years, tell him he is a minor. In the first one we did, in the opposite of, we said if the temperature is lesser than 25, you shouldn't even say anything. You should just allow the person to continue using his phone. Now, when the temperature is below, there is no action that will take place. But in this second example here, there's an action that will take place in the opposite. I said, if the person is lesser than 18, tell him you are not up to 18, you are a minor. But if the person is up to 18, tell him also you are an adult. So that's to say, once you tell him he's an adult, it implies he has the permission to vote. So those are my two conditions. So how do we do it? The same way we did the statement for the one condition is the same way. So you always start with your condition. Now, mind you, I said check whether the person is greater than 18. If the person's age is qualified, if his age qualifies him to vote. So how do you write it? The first thing is to start with your if statement. So I wrote my if statement. And what do we say you should check? We say always check the age of the person. So already here I just defined my variable age, and then I give it an example 18. Mind you, this example is up to you who is coding. You can change it to anything, 10, 20, but make sure it's checking this condition. Now, why is this place fluctuating? Because this is the place that maybe user will give his age. So let's assume you've built this very interface is like a system for user to enter their age, and then maybe the person says my age is 18. So you kept the age. You now say, okay, now let me write the condition that we check through this age and see whether the person is qualified to vote or not. So we said you should check the person is allowed to vote once he's from 18 and above. Once he's from 18 and above. That is why you see I said check if age is greater than or equal to. Greater than means from 19, 20, 21 upward, or equal to means with inclusion of age 18. So that's to say age greater than or equal to 18, we start checking if that person is an adult from 18 years, 18, 19 upwards. So as long as you met that criteria, it is to hint to the person you are an adult. It means you are qualified to vote. Okay, what should happen if the person is not up to 18? That is where the else statement comes into play. And I said this else statement will carry the opposite of this guy. Age is greater than or equal to 18. The direct opposite is age is less than 18. We cannot say it's less than or equal to 18 because remember greater than or equal to means it's including 18 inside. So for a person not to be an adult, his age must stop at 17. And 17 is the last number lesser than 18. So we cannot say the opposite is age is less than or equal to 18. Because if we say or equal to, it means we are including 18 too. So you have to say the opposite should be age is less than 18. So this else statement here takes that condition. So the condition that else statement has hidden, which you cannot see, is called age is less than 18 because it took that condition from this guy. That's why it took the condition. So this is condition, whereas it will not show you the condition is hidden. And then it says if that other condition is met, you should print you are a minor. So it's going to signify the person that you signify the user that you are a minor, your age is not up to 18, so you can't vote. So the age that our user entered, he entered 18 years. So since the person is an adult, you see it will print you an adult. So let's assume the user that will give our program entered his 12, 14 years. You see, he said you are a minor. Why? Because he's not yet up to 18. So it will not allow the person to vote. So that is a typical illustration of how to use two condition statements. So before I proceed, I just want to hear a little review. Is my lesson clear enough? Is there any question so far? I hope I'm not confusing anyone before we proceed further. Hello, can you all hear me? Okay, I can see two hands up.
Yeah, the thing is that the line keeps breaking at intervals. Sometimes it will just cease. We don't get you due to, I
Okay,
think, maybe it's network or so.
okay, oh, okay. I think he has muted his mic. Um, So I don't know, Sha. But others I don't know. Can you like clearly hear me so that I should know whether the network issue is from my own end or from his own end?
Yeah, actually, the network is clear in my end. I heard everything and
Okay, from
I
your own
really
end is
understand.
clear, huh?
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay. So probably I think is from his network. So okay.
Yeah, I believe from our end too, the network is clear.
Okay. So
Yeah, it's
I
okay.
think it's from your network, Sha. But I believe after everything, I will still drop the video so that after everything, maybe points that one misses out, you can go back and watch. Right? So, Mr.
All
Owen,
right.
I think your hand is up. So I don't know. Is it a question you have? Hello, Owen.
Yeah,
Okay, I think.
yeah. No, I was just saying the network is clear enough,
Okay,
so I believe it's from that
all
particular
right,
person complaining.
all right. So no issue.
Mm.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, so let's proceed. Yeah? Okay, let me refresh. All right. So that's for the two conditions. So I've clearly explained the one condition, two condition. So now back to three or more condition now. For three or more condition, it allows you to use if. Now, mind you, if statement you might ask, can I use else before if? The answer is no. If must start first before else. Else is always the last thing. Else is the last thing in the whole system, in the whole flow for making selection. So you always start with if. So if is the oga, he's the one that holds the condition. Then else takes the opposite and else must come last. Then when you are doing more than two, that is you have three, four, five condition. For those kind of situation, if starts, then followed by else. If is a now I said it starts with if, then followed by el, then if. If is a collection of if and else together. And then you finish your statement with else. Now, this if gives you flexibility in the sense that you can use it more than one, more than twice, more than three times. It depends on your condition. So if you have just three conditions, you start with if takes one condition, elif takes the second condition, and then else takes the last condition. So you can see that's three conditions. Now, what if you have four conditions? If you have four conditions, if we take the first condition, else takes the last condition, and then you have two elif in the middle. So elif, the number of elif you are to use in your condition depends on the number of conditions you have. I'll repeat. The number of elif you are to use in your condition depends on the number of conditions you have. So that's a simple explanation on how to use elif. So if you have 10 condition, it means, okay, let's say 10 condition. It means you have one condition for if, the last condition for else, and then you are going to have 8 elif conditions. So that is how elif works. And then similar to if statement, we say if statement, you always give it a condition in bracket, right? The same thing applies to elif. You also give it a condition in bracket. You also give it a condition in bracket. Then else, as usual, else doesn't have a condition at all. So let's create okay, before this example, let me do something let's do something simple. Let me comment this before we come to this. Let me give another example here. Okay, let's assume a practical example that has just 3 conditions. Let's say I want to check if a number is even is an even number or not an even number. Let's assume we want to check whether or not a number is an even number. Check if a number is even or not. Or no, okay, no, let me not say even number. No, let's not use even number. Check if a number is positive or negative or neutral. Now, what is a neutral number? A neutral number is 0. 0 is a neutral number. So let's assume we want to write a program that will check if a number is positive. Positive number are numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They are all positive number. Then what are negative number? Negative numbers are numbers like -1, -2, -3. And then what is a neutral number? A neutral number is a number that is equal to 0. Okay. So how will you write the condition? Now, what is the condition for a number to be a positive number? A number is only a positive number if it is greater than 0. I believe we all agree with that. A number can only be positive if it is greater than 0. Then what makes it a negative number? A number can only be negative if it is lesser than 0. Then what makes a number neutral? A number is neutral if it is equal to 0. So let me do something like this. Since this one we take our if, let me put it in the middle. So let me comment this so that it won't raise an error for us. So we say we want to check if our program we've written, we want to check if a number is a positive number, a negative number, or is a neutral number. So the first thing I said any variable you want to use, first of all, define the variable. So maybe let's call our variable number. Remember, I told you this name, it depends on you. Or let me even not say number, let me just call it num. So for instance, let me just give a test number 12. It's a test number just to define my variable. I can later change it. So let's start. We said if num. Now the first condition we need to, don't mind what you are seeing here, is because the Google Colab is using AI. So from the condition I gave here, it's trying to generate the code for me. That's why you saw that pop up. Okay, so we've defined our number. We gave it a default value 12. Now, what is the condition to check if that number is positive? We said a number can only be positive if the number is greater than 0. Then our normal dot. So if the number is greater than 0, we should print what? We can say it is a positive, it is a positive number. Then what happened? Now let me first of all write my else statement before I come to the elif. Now If it is not now, if number is greater than 0, we say it is a positive number. So what will be the opposite? The opposite will automatically be the number is lesser than 0. Or we say lesser than or equal to 0. That's the opposite direct. So that is what the else statement will carry. So let's say print it is a negative number. So this is our else. So now let's write our elif. Our elif is the one that will carry neutral number. And how do we write it? You first of all write elif, then you give it that condition. What is the condition? We said the condition is if the number is equal to 0. And if you recall, that day I said this is how we write equal to. If you write just one equal to like this, we don't call it equal to. I said we call it assignment operator. So take note, equal to and assignment operator are two different things. We said we use assignment operator when you are trying to define a variable. That's the only time you can use assignment operator. But when you are talking about normal equal to, like in the case we said, for a number to be neutral, it has to be equal to 0. You have to use double assignment operator. So if num is equal to 0, you have to print it. You have to print quotation mark because it's a string. It is a neutral number like this. So you can see I've brought out my 3 exact conditions. So let's see what happens if I'm changing this number. So num is greater than 12. Automatically I know this is a positive number. So let's run it. You can see it says it's a positive number. So let's put minus in front of it and see. Now we've put minus 12. You can see it is a negative number. So let's put it to be 0 and see. It is a neutral number. So you can see this is a typical example of 3 conditions. We have exactly 3 conditions. So the next example I want us to look at has 4. I just limited it to 4, but it's usually more than 4. Normal way we do calculate our CGPA in school, not just CGPA, grade generally. I gave an instance. Now for my own scheme I used here, I said if a person scores 90 and above, let me define it up here, and then we'll use it to understand the condition. If a person scores 90 and above, his grade should be A. If a person scores 70 to 89, his grade should be B. Then if a person scores 50 to 69, his grade should be C. And then if that person scores 49 downward to 0, just tell the person you failed. You failed. So these are the conditions for our school grading system, because as if I'm trying to build a school grading system that follows this scheme. I give it 4 conditions. I say if you have 90 and above, the person is called A. If the person scores 70 to 79, between 70 to 89, tell the person his grade is B. And then if the other person scores from 50 to 69, tell the person his grade is C. And then if the person scores 49 downward, tell the person you failed. So following this condition, first thing I need to define my variable. So I call my variable score and I gave it a value 60, which you can later change. And then I wrote out the first condition. If the person scores 90 and above means greater than or equal to 90. It means it will start from 90 upward. So that's the first condition I wrote here. If your score is greater than or equal to 90, the person score A, and then I print you got an A. First condition met. Now second condition says if the person scores 70 to 89. Now be very careful and pay attention. Let me explain something here very Well, now you can see I first of all wrote my if, and then one thing with programming is there's no how you can straightforward you can't write this 70 to 89 straightforward. You need to break them and compare. You need to compare the score with 70 and then compare the score with 89. Compare score with 70, then come back and compare score again with 89. But then you need to link them. How do you link them? You use and statement to link them together. So and is like this two that I put. I say 72, 89. In my program, this two is represented by this and because this and is like a linkage between the comparison of score and 70 and then score and 89. So this dash here is represented by this and. So let's start with 70. The condition given to us, they say if the person scored 70 to 89. So let's forget about 89 first. Let's start with 70. So in order for us to start with 70, the moment we wrote our elif, we are making reference to score. So we say score is greater than or equal to 70 because numbers that are between 70 to 89, they are greater than 70. They start from 70, greater than 70, but they stop at 89. They don't go beyond 89. So that's to say here itself I can change this my condition. Because someone will ask why did they tell us 89 and I'm using 90? It's still the same thing. But let me change it like this for easy understanding. So let's change it like this. So the first condition, numbers that are between 70 to 89, they are greater than 70. They are equal to 70, greater than 70, but less than 89. But you can have a number that is also equal to 89. So if you check, it is that condition that I use to write out my condition. I told you need to compare score with 70 first, and then come back compare score with 89 also. So starting from 70 to 89, 70 is included. That is why my score, you can see I put this equal to sign because my number will start from 70. And then the numbers that are between them are numbers that are also greater than 70. So that is why I said check if score is greater than or equal to 70. I've met this condition. I've met the condition on the other side. And then now I want to put these two. I said this two is being represented by and. So whenever you have like this, you just put and in between them. It represents that. And then back to the second condition. Now numbers that are between the range of 70 to 89, those that are above 70, if you are comparing them with 89, they are lesser than 89, and then 89 itself, since it's within the range, is equal to 89. So that is why on this side I also compare. I told you you need to compare score individually. Compare score with 70 and those above it, and then also compare score with those that are below the 89 given. So that is why I see here I wrote score here, and then I gave it the condition for 70. After I came back and wrote score again. Then I give it the condition that is less than 89. If you don't do it like that, it will raise an error. Look at something. Let me assume I removed this score now and then run it. You see, it will create a problem. You see, it's been highlighted as red. It's trying to tell me there's an error. You see, it's an invalid syntax. Okay, I want to believe you can all see my screen, right? Is my screen clear and visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Sorry, sir.
Yes, sir.
Before you continue, I don't know if I can ask a question before I forget.
Okay, yes, yeah, you can.
Since there's a break. Okay. From this part,
Yeah.
I'm coming. Just let me see your screen full. Okay, where the assignments? There's a place to do an assignment for these 4 conditions. Yeah.
Okay.
No. This CGPA conditions, where the condition is.
Okay. That's yeah.
That's the assignment. Yes, exactly. Now in the assignment,
Yeah.
uh,
Yes, sir.
when you are assigning 49 to 0
Yes.
equals to
You
you
fail.
failed, Abi,
Yeah.
in quotes now. Then for the one that if it's 90 and above is equals to A,
Yeah.
70 to 89 is equals to B. Now, those these are these variables now that you
Yeah.
assigned now. You know, this other one, the one that you said,
Okay. Continue.
the one that you said is equals, the one that you said you failed.
Yeah.
There's a quotation there, and this other one that is ABC, there is no quotation.
Okay.
Is it
No, they
okay
are
that way?
no, they are to have. They are to have.
That you have quotation, but
Yeah, it's
the
because
ABC are
I'm
to have
just
quotation,
it's
Abi.
because I'm explaining and I change it to this thing. So properly, let's just put the quotation. So all of them. Remember, I told you as long as it is not a number, it has to be in quotation. It
Uh-huh.
was because I'm explaining
And
that is why. And this one, mind you, this is not a variable. I'm
okay,
just trying to like define the
is a
condition.
con- sure.
You
Okay.
understand? Yeah. Because a variable, I
Uh,
remember I said variable can never start with a number.
that holds a constant. And my second question,
Yeah.
like this condition now, this the if condition now,
Yes, sir.
where you're stating it's less than or equal to 89.
Yeah.
Eh?
Yes.
If one should put a condition that is less than 90,
It's
when
still
the assignment there is 90, now you are putting a condition that for you to know that you got A
yeah.
when it's or let me see this if when the
Yes.
condition is greater than 70 and the score when the score is greater than 70 and the score is less than 90, will it work that way?
It will work. That was formerly what was there. But I decided to remove
Okay,
it just to show that you can also use another. 89 is less than
okay,
90.
yes, so exactly.
So you can put less than 90
Okay,
or you can say less than or equal to 89.
or equal to
Yes.
89.
So both of
Okay,
them they
thank
are
you, sir.
logically correct. Okay, it's
Okay,
clever.
thank you, sir.
All right.
It's clear.
Okay, so I don't know. Is there anyone with any question? Maybe you can ask if there's any clarity you need on something before I proceed. But and again, please hope my explanation are clear. Hope I'm not confusing
Very
anything.
clear.
All right.
Very, very clear, sir. I got this.
So others, let's put in our own now. Let's say something. I want to know. It's only two people that have indicated. The rest are mute. So you can let me know if it's clear or I need to like give a recap. Okay. So I can see some thumbs up. It means we are on the same page. Go. All right. So let's proceed. Okay. So
Which is the talk.
our condition
Don't join the class.
have
This one will scatter around to
have
programming.
okay. So I've explained these and I said all the condition we have to write them out. For this 70 to 89, we use elif and then we write out the condition. I said this dash here we represent it with and to write out the condition for it. And then the same thing applies for 52, 69, and then the last condition also the same thing. But remember, this last condition we are not to write it because I told you else always take the opposite of whatever is remaining. So now, like when we're using if and else only, I told you else takes the opposite of the if. Now, if you use elif, what else takes is the opposite of this. Else takes the opposite of what is not here, what is not here, and what is not here. Conditions that are not met here, not met here, not met here, if else automatically carries them. So for instance, 90 and above is met here, 70 to 89 is met here, 50 to 69 is met here, but 49 to 0 are not met within here. So else automatically carries that. So whatever is not met by your first order conditions, is automatically being carried by else. So that is how this condition works. So now you can see now my score I say 60. You can see 60 is within this range. That is why it printed you got a C. If I should change it maybe to 45, it will tell me you failed. If I should change it to 95, it will tell me you got an A. So this is a typical example of how to use three condition statements. So that is clear. So attached to this file, I gave an assignment which you are all to check out and solve them from now to our next meeting. So if you've solved yours within the week, you can drop it to the group, or preferably I will drop my email. Maybe you can just or yeah, you can send it via email, or you can privately DM me the solution, and then I will go through it and then give you feedback. So the second control structure we'll be looking at is loop. Now, what is loop? Loop is a control structure that allows you to repeat something that can be executed more than once. A loop allows you to repeat something that can be executed more than once. That is what a loop is. Mr. Owen, I can see your hand is up, so I don't know. Is it a question or it was the one before? Okay, all right, thank you.
If you missed it.
Okay, all right, sir. Mr. Is this Salid or is Abdul Bashir? I can see your hand is up too. I think you have a question, right?
Yes, I have a question. You
Okay,
said
sir.
you are going to bring your email. I skipped that question, sir.
Huh?
I skipped what you said.
Okay, it's
Yeah, you said
concerning
you are
the
going
assignment.
to drop an email.
Okay, it's concerning the assignment. I said this is an assignment attached to the file. So I'm going to drop my email so that when you solve, you can send it to me via email, or you can just send me the file, the Jupyter file to my DM so that I can go through it. So that same Jupyter file I give you, you can just add code and then solve it within that file and then send it to me. I will check it. Yes, sir. All right. Okay, is that all? Okay, I think that's just
Yes, sir.
that's the
Yes,
question
sir.
he has. All right. Okay, so now back to loops. Now I said loop is something that allows you to perform something that can be repeated more than once. A practical example, if I should say print number 1 to 10, it is a loop. Now, why is it a loop? Because it is a loop because 1 to 10 follows a sequence. And what is that sequence? 1, the difference between 1 and 2 is 1. The difference between 2 and 3 is 1. The difference between 3 and 4 is 1. So what is the sequence? The sequence is for you to go to the next number, you add 1 to it. So those kind of sequence are what we call loop. Something that they can be repeated, is repeated. It's following each other, like in order. That is what we call loop. It's like a cycle, a repeated cycle. So another practical example of sequence is even number 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. This is a sequence because they are following each other by 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. So this is a practical example of a sequence or of a loop also. Another example is odd number 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Why? Because if you check, they are also following each other by 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. It's a sequence. Another example is minus 10, minus 5, and 5, okay, 0, minus 10, minus 5, yeah, 0, 5, 10. They are all what? Sequence. Because the moment I add 5, if I add 5 to minus 5 to minus 10, the answer is minus 5. If I add 5 to minus 5, the answer is 0. If I add 5 to 0, the answer is 5. If I add 5, so if you check, it's an addition of 5, 5. So all these kind of things are what we call loop. Loop allows you to repeat something. So for example, let's say you are writing a program that okay, sorry, let me admit someone. I forgot to set it to allow anyone to join. Okay, so let's assume I'm writing a program that wants you to like, let's say I want you to print your name 10 times. Default way that I've shown you, I told you whenever you want to output something, you write print. So let's say I want to print my name 10 times. I need to write print JC 1, print JC 2. I need to continue this until it's up to 10, and it's stressful. Okay, that 10 times may look easy. Okay, what if I want you to write my name 100 times? It will be very stressful. That is where loop come into play. So let me show you a practical example of how to use loop. Now, this is the condition for using a loop. Basically, in programming, we have 3 sentences for loop. But in Python, the most commonly used ones are while loop, and for loop. What is it? While loop and for loop. They are the commonly used one. But for the sake of we starting, I will focus my attention more on the for loop. The for loop is more flexible because while loop is a kind of confusing. But on your own, you can just try to like read about the while loop if you want to expand yourself on it. But I will always advise prioritize using for loop because for loop is easy and it is more flexible, unlike the while loop. So the structure for the for loop is um, um for, and then let me call it should I say condition? No, let's say statement in range and then condition. Remember, I told you control structure always end with this point. Then you run right print whatever you want to print. What you want. So this is the condition. Now let me use it now to explain what I did down here, and then we'll now give the illustration of printing my name 10 times. So how do we do that? Now I said, look at here, I said for x in range of 1 to 10. Now what this program is simply doing, this program I wrote here, I wrote a program that can print numbers from 1 to 10 for me. So one important thing when you are using the for loop is this range statement. It's one important thing to use whenever you are using the for loop, this range statement. Now, what does the range statement accept? The range statement accepts 3 things. The first one is tell him where it is to start from. The second statement, separated by comma, tells it where it is to stop. I say first tells you where to start, second tells it where to stop, and then the third one tells it the step. The third one tells it the step. Now, what is the step? Step means pattern, that is like the gap between them. For instance, I said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I said the difference between them is 1, 1, 1, 1. Now that 1, 1, which is their difference, is what we call step. So, but default, if you didn't write the step, automatically it assumes your step is 1. That's how the range function is designed to work. If you didn't write a third comma, you didn't write a third thing for the step. If I should write 1 or I didn't write anything, it knows I'm making reference to 1. But if your step is not 1, for instance, I want to write even number. If I should change here, I put 2. If I should run this program, you see something change. You can see, but because I started with 1, it was printing out odd numbers for me. Why? Because I changed here to 2. So this step tells you the difference between this number and this next one, this number and this next one, this one and this next one, this one and this next one. So that is what the step, that is the third option, that is what it solves. So it checks for the interval between them. So now, what is this x here? Now, this x is like what will help you to print out the numbers that are here. So this x is a variable that change. Remember, variable as the name implies. Variable is something that varies. That is why I do manually go and change it. So variable is something that varies. So this x here is a representation of our variable. Now, what is the variable? The variable here, someone might ask, why didn't I go up and say x equal to 1? Maybe x equal to 1 or x equal to 2. Why didn't I assign it? Why am I saying x is a variable here, but I didn't define it anyway? Now, in for loop, you don't need to define the x. The x automatically carries the number that defines it from this range that you give it. So the very first number, okay, I was thinking someone was right.
No.
Okay,
Yes,
you have
sir.
a question?
Yes, I am raising my hand. No, it's not a question. I have not been seeing this screen for over 5 minutes, but it has shown now.
Okay, the screen is up now.
Yes, but I haven't been seeing it for over
Okay,
5
I
minutes.
think it was your network. I believe others will see my screen now,
Okay.
right? Please indicate, have you been seeing my screen or it was up for long? It was out for long.
Yeah,
Yeah,
me, I've been seeing the screen.
Okay,
It didn't
the
go.
screen has been on.
okay, all right. I think it's
So I believe it's from Zoom.
from your end. All right. So after everything, there's still a video to flash back on. So maybe points you've missed out, you can still check there. Okay. So as I was saying, I said this x is a variable. So normally before I said define the variable, assign a number to it, but here I didn't assign. What it does, this variable x, it automatically carries this place that you tell him to start from. Remember, I said this is start, this is end, and then after end we have comma, we now have step for the range statement. So this x automatically carries this start to be the variable. So behind the scene, this x that I defined here, behind the scene x is allocated to 1. So x is equal to 1. If I should change here to 5, behind the scene x is allocated to 5. If I should change here to 8, behind the scene x is allocated to 8. So you see, for statement has given you a flexibility. Number one, you don't need to define your variable. You just give him the variable, give him the range. He knows where to pick the variable from. He knows where to pick the variable from. So that is the joy of using for loop. So how do you start it? You always start with the for statement. Just like when we're doing selection, I said you always start with if statement. So for this one, you always start with for statement, followed by your variable that you want to be temporarily storing these numbers as they change. Because we want to print 1 to 10. So you can't tell me that after 1, it will stop there. After 1, it needs to go to 2. So this variable will temporarily hold the previous number before it goes to the next number. So it will start with 1. The moment it has printed 1 out, this variable will change to the next number by adding 1. It will go and check for the step and then add the step to the previous number. So the variable will become updated. From 1, it will go to 2. After it has printed 2, it will go and check the step again, manually update itself. So in this case, the variable will be changing until it gets to this last number. That is how it works. Now back to this last number, something usually happen here. Now I said I want to print numbers 1 to 10, but look at my output, 10 was not included. Let me explain. Why is 10 not included? Now the range statement, it was designed in such a way that the start, whatever the start number you give to it, it will start from there. But the last number that you give to him, he always stop one number before that number. It doesn't include that number. I'll come again. The end part, it doesn't include the number that you write. It always stop one way behind what you gave him. That is, it always stop by 1 before that thing. So in order for me to make 10 to appear here, I need to write 11 rather. Remember, I said it's 1 before. So in order for me to output 10 also, the moment I write 11, you will see that 10 will be included. So if I should tell you write number that prints 1 to 100, once you write for x in range of 1 comma, you are not to write 100, you have to write 101. Why? Because you want your 100 to appear. If not, 100 will not appear. So let's run it and see. You can see. Because I wrote 101, you can see 100 appear. But if I should change here, if I should change my program to 100, you see it stop at 99. You can see it stopped at 99. So please always be careful whenever you are using for loop. If you want to output something, always that place you want to stop, always add 1 to it. Always add 1 to it. But for the beginning, that's the start. Don't add any 1. Just write that specific number you want to start from. I believe I'm clear on that. So I said for x in range of 1 comma 10 comma, I didn't put the step. Why? Because it automatically knows that the step is 1, because I want to print number from 1 to 10. And I'll go down, I said print x. Remember, it is a control structure. So you see, when I click, after putting my dot, as I press enter, it created an indentation for me. And then I said print x. So x is this variable. Remember, I told you the variable will be changing. It will be updating itself, changing. Once it prints number 1, it will go back, update itself, print again, go back, update itself, print. It only stops when it gets to this last condition you give it. So immediately it gets to this last condition, it automatically stops. And then it breaks out of the loop. Remember, I told you the loop is repetition. So this end statement here helps you to know where to break from the loop. So immediately it gets to 11 is our condition, because I want 10 to be included. So immediately it gets to number 10. As it's going to 11, it will say, Kai, I've come to the end of the loop, so let me break out. So it will break out. That is why you see the number it brings out is not above 10. So it automatically stops there. So I believe this explanation is clear, right? So this is it to write your number from 1 to 10. I did print x. You can see it brought out all the numbers. Let me write another example. Let's say we want to print numbers from 1 to 50. The same thing. I will say for x in and then range. I say 1 to 50. So my start is 1, comma, what? 50. But I'm not to write 50. Why? Because if I write 50, 50 will not be included. So I'm to write what? 51. And then I put my 2 dots. And then I say print. Now, mind you, this is not the only thing you can use here. You can use anything. Let me call it y, for instance. So I will now say print y. But mind you, whatever you use here should be what should be here. Whatever you use here should be here. So don't use two different things. So if I should print, you'll see 1 to 50 is outputted. Now, the next code that I did here was a program to print odd numbers from 1 to 10 for me. But there's something, let me explain something. Now, if you see, when we printed it, it's printing out the numbers vertically for me. And this is like stressing my view. So I did something here to print it horizontally. Now, if you want to print, now this one we call them, they are like decorators. They just help make your code to appear very well. So you can write it to your print statement. Okay, so let me remove it first. Then we write it from scratch. Now I want to write a program that prints odd numbers. I say odd numbers. So the first odd number is 1. After 1, the next odd number is 3. And you know, odd numbers, they differ from each other by 2, 2, 2, 2. That is why you see my step here. I put comma 2. Because after number 1, it will add this step to number 1 to go to the next one. So 1 plus 2 is 3. After 3, it will add another 2 again. It becomes 5. After that, it adds another 2 again. It becomes 7. After that, it adds another 2 again. It becomes 9. 10 is not an odd number. So 9 has to be the last. And remember, the condition is to 11. So it will not include 11 there. So after writing the condition, I said print x. But if I should run it, it will print it straight. But I don't want it to print straight. That is why I put comma end. Now this end that I put here, I said it's a decorator. How does it work? What this end do is, you are trying to tell him whenever you print this number 1, what should be at the end, this space here after the number one, this space after the number one vertically like this, what should be there before it goes to another line. So I told it I don't want you to go to another line. I don't want you to go to another line. All I just want you to do is I want you to create a space. I use tab to create a space. I said after you print number one, don't go to another line. Rather just create a space and then print the next number beside it. After that, print another next number beside it. That is what this end does. So immediately I run it, you see now it's printing them side by side. Anything you put here is what will appear. Okay, let me say I want you to print hash at the end. If I should run it, you can see after number one, it printed these hashes as that I put, it then printed 3, put these hashes, printed 5, put these hashes, printed 7. So that is what the end does. The end modifies how the statement is to end. After it has print a new it has print out something, it will tell him whether it's to go to a new line or it should continue printing the other ones on the same line. So that is so for a good practice, if you want to output numbers like this, it is good to always use this end equal to, so that your output should be printed on the same place. So this next code, I wanted to print out. I printed out numbers from 100. I printed out multiples of 5, that is numbers that differ from each other by 5, 5, 5, 5. I printed those numbers between 100 to 150. So that is 100, 105, 110, 115, 120, like that. So I started for X in range as usual, and then I said it should start from 100, it should stop at 150. But since 150, I want 150 to be included, that is why I said 151. Remember, I told you why. And then the step, that is the difference between them, should be 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. That is why I put my step as 5. And then I said print X, that is, you should print this variable. But since I want them to be printed on the same line, I added my end equal to quotation mark, and then I created a space between them. So immediately you execute, you can see it printed them horizontally. So I can even start from 1. So if I should change here to 1, you can see printed 1. Okay, now let me start from 5 rather. Let's print those ones from 5 to 150. So this is how the for loop works. So I don't know. Is there any question on the for loop before I forge ahead? I'm just trying to check the time so that the meeting should not end us impromptu. So I don't know. Any question? Okay. I think no question. So let me. Okay. Someone has a question. Okay. You can ask your question, sir.
Yeah, good evening. Should in case of or a situation whereby you want to write names in loop,
Okay.
I don't know. Is it that you instead of that X it will be your name or how? I don't get.
Okay. I don't understand.
You know, you said X there is the variable.
Okay.
Yeah, so should in case I want to write your name in 10 places, Jason in 10 places.
Okay.
Instead of
Yeah.
X,
Sorry, I didn't give that example, but okay. Let's do it now. Let's do that example. I'll say for X
thank you.
in range of, let's say I want to print it 10 times. Now for that one, I'll just say for X in range of 10. I don't need to give it the start for those kind of example. I don't even need to give it where to start because it is my name that I want to print.
Yes.
I don't need to give it a start. All I will now do now, right? I'll say print JC. As you can see, it printed JC 10 times.
Okay.
You see? So the moment you change here, now if I want it to print JC in one line, I'll put my comma
And
equal to, and then my
bracket.
cancel. I believe I've answered your question, but
Yes, sir.
all right. So please take note. If you are trying to maybe write a name, there is no need. Now this one is a number. That is why you need to tell it where to start from. If you are doing a name, you don't need to write the start. You just need to tell him how many times you want to write the name. And for those type, since you didn't give him the start, there's no need to like share here. I said since you gave it start, you are stopping at 150, you need to add 1. Here, you don't need to add 1. It will carry the exact number that you gave him here and then do it. So, but most of the times we are using this in range, you always use numbers. So that is that for that. Okay, the next, I believe there's no any other question, but all right. I think there's no any other question. So let's proceed. Um, I think we have 20 minutes, and I'm just being slow because I really want us to understand. Because it's not all about the quantity of what we cover; it's about how well you understood what we are doing. So that is why I'm a little bit kind of slow. But they will get to a place where I will increase my speed along the way once we are familiar with some of the concepts since we just started. So I think if this time is about to end, I will need to create one more so that we finish up what we have. Because along the way, once we get to this data manipulation, I will show you how to work with real world data. So I just want to finish up with this concept first before we get to that. So, and I really want us to cover all that today. Okay, so the next thing is data structure. Now, what is data structure? Data structures are they are like containers. They are also like variables, but not really variables. They are more than variables. They are like containers that you can store something. A practical example, let me say database. I want to use database to explain. Not that database is a data structure, but I'm just using it to explain. Because database is like a data structure that holds maybe information about a person. For instance, if you are registering let's assume like the example I gave out here. I just did an assumption. Maybe I'm trying to build a system that will collect the information of person. The system is collecting three information about the person: his name, his age, and his state of origin. Let's assume I build an app that collects those three information. So my app stores those variables for that person. It stores. So here I created three variables that holds an information for a person. Now, if you look at formally, when we're creating variables, we only give our variable just one value. The variables we'll be creating is just one value. Temperature, we just say temperature equal to 40. We say age equal to 20. But if you look at this one, there's a difference. Here, I gave it three values and then I put a square bracket, a square bracket. Now, this data structure, we call it a list. A list is a data structure that holds information about people, but it doesn't tell you what information it is holding unless the person that created it tells you. Or you, the person that you are creating, you are the one that knows what that thing is holding. We call that a list. Like for instance now, I just showed you JC27 Kaduna. I didn't tell you until when I said JC means is a data that represents a person's name. 27 represents his age. Kaduna represents his state of origin. So this is a list. So that's one limitation of list. Unless the person that builds it tells you what it contains, you can't know. That is a list. Now we have plenty data structure, but for the sake of our class, I only discussed two. The second one is called dictionary. Now, if you look at dictionary, even without me telling you, if you look at this dictionary, it makes more sense because you can see I said name before I wrote JC. I said age before I wrote 27. I said state before I wrote Kaduna. Now, this dictionary is the one that carries the exact structure of a database. Because for you to store information in a database, you must arrange them. Name, you must put it under name. Age, you must put it under age. State, you must put it under state. Now, if you look at this one, it's more easier to understand because it has this first thing that tells you what this next information is. This one like this, we call it key. And then this one, we call it value. So a dictionary has a key and a value. The key is what defines what you are saving. And then the value is the content that the key is holding. I will repeat. The key is the one that tells you what the value is. And then the value is the actual thing that you are holding. So the key in this condition is the name. Now, three different things can have the same key but they may not have the same value. So if you look at name repeated, but the values are different. Age repeated, but the values are different. State repeated, but the values are different. So key can be different, can be the same across different database, but the values may differ. It's not that they cannot be the same. Two people can have the name JC, 10 people can have the name JC, but they may differ. I didn't say they must differ. They may differ, but key at times does not differ. All of them will have the same key. So that is the difference between a list and a dictionary. Now, back to my list. Now, the same way I told you you can use a for loop, you can also use loop in a data structure also. So for back to this list. Now, mind you, what differentiates a list and a dictionary? A list always has a square bracket. This bracket like this, if you check, this is a square bracket. So if I should ask you create a list for me, a list that store people's name. And another thing, list can have the same thing. That's the same type of data. Maybe it can have 10 people's names in it. A list can have a name, a list of 10 people's name. It's not bad. A list can have different type of data, maybe name, age, phone number. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They mustn't be the same. So that is a list for you. So what differentiates a list and a dictionary? If you check, a list has a square bracket, but look at that of a dictionary. It has what we call a curly bracket. You can see they are different. This one is a curly bracket, while the other one is a square bracket. So whenever you are trying to define a list, you must use this square bracket. Square bracket. Then whenever you are defining a dictionary, you must use the curly bracket. So that's the difference between a dictionary and a list. I believe the difference is clear. Okay, we have 30 minutes. So sorry, let me just do something quickly while I'm sharing my screen. Let me just create another link so that immediately this one stop, we can just switch to the other one without wasting time. Since I discovered the thing only lasts for an hour now. Oops, sorry. I think the network is coming a little bit slow. Okay. Just don't mind the time. I will just put the time, but we can kickstart before the time. Let me just set it so that okay. So immediately the other one stop. You can just join via this link to proceed. Okay, back to what I'm saying. So I've differentiated a list and a dictionary. So back to connection between data structure and our loop that we talk about. Now, remember I told you loop is something that can go through something. It can go through and print out something that are following each other. Now, there is a way you can use loop in a list. Now, how do you use that? Now, I can read through all these things that are here. Maybe I want to print them out. You can read through and then print them. Sorry, you can read through and then print them out at once using a for loop. So how do you do that? In order for you to do that, you use the same way we did the other one, but there's a little difference. Now we start with for x in. Now the difference between when you are doing a list and when you are doing the other one, you only use range when you are trying to work with number. Now this is a list we are working with. So here you don't say in range. Here you don't say in range. So here you don't say in range. What you just do is you just call the name of that list. So if you check, I have 3 lists here that I've defined. So let me pick this list. Let's work with this second list here. So the name of our list is person 2. That's the name of our list. So let's say for x in person 2. Now what are these our x? Our x are all these items that are inside person 2. So for x in person 2, print x. So what it does is it's going to read through person 2 and then print out all the items that are inside person 2. So let's run it and see. Okay, let me see. Okay, I didn't run this cell. Sorry, I didn't run this cell. That was why. Good. So you can see it printed them out. You can see James is the first item. You can see James. 25 is the next item. You can see 25. Kogi is the next item. You can see Kogi. So that is how you use for loop in list. So in order for you to use it in list, the only thing that differentiates this one and the other one is that the other one you use range. Why did you use range? Because you are working with numbers. And then if you are using it, you just want to print out things that are inside a list. You are not working with number. You can just say for x in, forget about the range, just write the name of your list and then print. So that is how to use a for loop in a list. And then I did also for person 1. I did the same thing and then I ran it. Now, what if you want to use range? Maybe you feel like, although this one is more simpler, but maybe you feel like, okay, since range, we have been using range before, it will be good if we can make use of range. How do you use range? Now, let me show you something. Every list, every data structure has what we call length. It has a length. Now, what is the length? The length is how many items it has inside of it. Now, if I should ask you this person 1, what is the length? The length of this list is 3. Why? Because the item inside are 3. 1, 2, 3. How do you know they are 3? You check them after the comma. After the comma. So from the beginning to this first comma, you have just JC, that's item 1. From this comma to the next comma, you have 27, that's item 2. After this comma, the third one, you have Kaduna, that is item 3. So if I should add another thing here, maybe I say 6.7, for instance, it can represent anything. The length now has changed to 4. That is the first thing you need to understand. So the first thing I said every list has a length. And then how do you check the length? The length is the number of items that it has. Although there's a shortcut you can check. If in order for you to check for the length, you can just put length and then you call the name of your list. I do for person 1, you can see the length is 3. The same thing, person 2 and person 3, all of them, they have the same length. So all of them you can see is 3, 3. That is the first thing you need to understand. Now, the second thing again that I'll talk about is each of these items in a list or in a dictionary, there's what we call index. Index is the position where something is seated. I'll come again. Index is the position where something is seated. Now, in indexing, we use numbers to index. However, in the numbering, we always start from 0, not 1. The first item always occupy position 0. The second one, position 1. The next one, position 2. The next one, position 3, like that. So if you are indexing, I mean you are trying to check position of a place. Whenever I say indexing, that's what I'm referring to. If you are trying to index, always start from 0. Never you start indexing from 1. The way your normal mathematics, you start counting from number 1. No, you always start indexing from number 0. So if I should ask you, what is the index of JC? The index of JC is 0. What is the index of 27 in this person 1? The index of 27 is 1. And then what is the index of Kaduna? The index of Kaduna is 2. So how do we know? Now let's check it. Here the list is called person 1. Okay, let's see. I said index 1, index 0 is JC. So let's say I want to check it. Let's say person 1, this is how you write it. If you want to write the index, you must write that square bracket, index 0. This is how you write if you want to check the position. So we are trying to check the item that is at index 0 inside list person 1. If I should run it, you see JC will be outputted. You can see JC. The one that is at position 1, we said is 27. If we should run it, you see 27. The one that is at position 2, if we run it, you see Kaduna. Now let's try something. So we say the length is only 3. Index 0, 1, 2. Do we have anything like index 3? No. If I should try checking for index 3, it will tell me there is an error because it was unable to find index 3. You can see list index out of range because it was unable to find index 3. So mind you, I spoke about 2 things. I said every list has a length. The length is the total number of items it has. That is 1. And then secondly, I said every item has an index. The first item always starts at index 0. So this is index 0, index 1, index 2. Now, in the indexing, you can go forward, you can go backward. But if you are going forward, you start from 0. If you are coming backward, you start from -1. So Kaduna is at index -1. 27 is at index -2. JC is at index -3. But if you are going forward like this, JC is at index 0, 27 is at index 1, Kaduna is at index 2. So let me just write their index down here, close to them for you to see. This is index 0, index 1, index 2. That is if I'm coming from the right. If I'm coming from right, going to left. Then what if I'm going from left to right? What if I'm going from left to right? So let me start from here. So I say if you are going from left to right, this guy is at index -1. This one is at index -2. And then this guy here is at index -3. So that's how it works. Forward, you start from 0, 1, 2, upward. Then here you start from -1, -2, minus. So any method of indexing you feel you are convenient with, either from right or left, you can work with it. So that is that with the indexing. So as I was saying, I said in list we have what we call indexing, and I said indexing has to do with position of items in a list, and I said you always start your indexing from 0. Never you start indexing from number 1. Always start your indexing from 0, before 1, before 2. Mind you, I didn't say 2 is the highest. It depends on the length of your list. So it can have 100, it can have more than. So just know that you always start from 0. That's if you are going from left to right. And then if you are coming from right to left, always start from -1. So take note of that. Okay, I'm just using person 1 to explain, but the same thing that I'm explaining in person 1 applies to person 2 and 3 also. So I'm just using 1 to give illustration. And I told you again, you cannot put a number that is outside the index. Now, the fact that we said the length, somebody may ask, okay, when we printed the length of this list, we saw that the length is 3. Okay, why is it that when we try to access item 3, since length is 3, we should be able to access item 3. But when we put item 3, it was raising error. The answer is since 0 is included in the index, so index had to stop at a number before 3. So index cannot include 3. If you are including 3, the length of your list must be 4. If you are to include 4, the length of your list must be 5. So the indexing and the length is always 1 is always 1 ahead of the indexing. If indexing stops at 2, length stops at 3. If indexing stops at 4, length stops at 5. So that's how it works. Okay, so back to that. So I've shown you cannot access any index that is outside the index you have. So that is that. Next, okay, I've explained this. I showed you how to print. Okay, now here I printed these same items, but I used another method. So please just pay attention here. Let me explain very well so that you shouldn't get confused, because it looks a little bit complex, but it isn't. Now it's a combination of all what we've done. So let me start it afresh. I'm trying to print. We know our person 1 is a list, but let me just use person 3. We know our person 3 is a list that has JNet 23 and JOS. Now I want to print JNet 23 and JOS serially. I want to print them out. How do I do that? First thing I say, start with for. In the other method, we'll say for X. In, we'll just say person 3, right? And then we'll put our dot, and then we'll say print X. So to bring them out, JNet 23 and JOS. That's the first method. Now in the second method, we'll say no, we want to learn how to use range. Now, in order for us to do that, now remember I told you can access a particular item in a list using its index. If I want to bring 23, what is the index of 23 in this list? The index is index 1. So in order for me to bring out 23, if I just say person 3 index 1, it will bring out 23 for me. If I should say person 3 index 0, it will bring out JNet for me. You can see. So that is the concept we will use to work with how to use range. But in order for you to work with range, one important thing you need to calculate is the length of your list. I said one important thing you need to calculate is the length of your list. Now, when I was teaching you how to print name 10 times, I said you just say for X in range, and then I told you you are not to write beginning and end. Just tell him how many times you want it to print, and then I said print that name that you want. For instance, I said JC. You can see I said print. Okay, let me just reduce it to 5. Let me just reduce it to 5, for instance. So it is this same concept that we will use to solve using the range statement. So the first thing we need to do is say for X in range of, now which number are we to put here? We are to put the length of this list. So what is the length? By default, you know the length is what? Because I showed you how to calculate it. I say in order for you to calculate it, all you need to do is just write len, L-E-N, and then you write the name of your list, person 3. And then when you run it, you can see it brought 3. So it's because I know it's 3. That is why I put 3. Okay, what if in a situation you don't know the length of the list? You have to calculate it using this. So I will copy this. Instead of me to write 3 here, I'm to remove 3 and then paste that thing. So it will calculate it for me by itself. And then I put my dots and then I say print. Now, I'm not to say print X. Why? Because we are talking about length. If I should print X, it will print out the length of the list for me. You can see it brought out the index, sorry, it bring out the index. Index 0, index 1, index 2. So these index now are what we are to use to access the items that are inside. And remember, I told you JNet index 0, person 3 index 0, 23 is person 3 index 1, JOS is person 3 index 2. Now, if you check here carefully, it brought out only their index. So this is the index for JNet, this is the index for 23, and this is the index for JOS. Right? Now, how are we going to use it here? So it's trying to tell us that this that is here is an index and not JNet 23 and JOS. It is an index. So, but how can we make it Janet 23 and Just. In order for us to make it pick, we need to make reference to this guy here. We need to make reference to the list. You have to tell the list that he is to go and pick from. So how do you make reference to that? You have to write the name of the list here. Person E, you have written the list. And then here you put your quotation, your square bracket, and then you write the index. And what is representing the index? This X is the guy representing the index. So immediately you do it like this, you run it, you will see Janet 23 and Just appears. So this is a practical example of how you can use range in order for you to work with a list. That is if you don't want to use this simpler one. Maybe you want to try something a little bit technical. You can try this. So I don't know. You can ask maybe if the explanation I did isn't that clear. So you can ask. Let me explain. So any question on what I just explained? Is there any question? What I explained, is it clear enough?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Only one person answered. I don't know for the rest. If you are mute, it means we are all on the same page. All right. So let me just proceed. But please, if you have a question, whenever I'm doing, just unmute your mic and then notify me so I can stop and then provide you with clarity on that. Okay. So that is that. I've shown the same thing I did on the same thing I did for list 1. This one I did for list 3. So I also did that for list 1 too. I say for, remember I told you it's not only X you can use. So let's try another thing. Let me just say for index. Let me try and call it index. For index in range of, how do we calculate the length of person 1? We'll say len and then another bracket. Then we'll say person 1. And then mind you, it's not outside of this second bracket that you put your dot to. No, you have to be outside of all the brackets and then put your dot. And then you hit enter and then write print. I said you cannot write index again. Why? Because if you write index, if you write index, it's going to bring out 0, 1, 2 for you. So rather, you have to write the name of the list first. So the name of my list is person 1, and then you put your square bracket, and then you write your variable up here, which is index. So if you print, you see the same thing will come out. So that is how it works. Now, there is a way. Now, the length of our list is 3. At times, if you are building an application, you may have a situation whereby people will add other information later. Okay, no, not even later. A practical example, let's say you are building a general purpose application that you don't know people's details. But what you want to collect their name, you want to collect their age, you want to collect their state, just like the one we did. Let's assume that's what we want to collect. Now, how will you create a list that will collect this thing? Or how will you auto put numbers to the list? Now, let me create an empty list. Let me say details of a person. That's the name of my list. Now, the way you can create list like this. Now, this type of list, we call it empty list. A list that doesn't have anything inside of it is called an empty list. A list that doesn't have anything in it is called an empty list. So let's assume when you build an application for me, the user, when I'm trying to use the application, I saw a place that asks me to enter my name. I saw a place that asked me to enter my age. And then I saw a place that asked me to enter my state. Now, you want to immediately me as the user enter my name, you should put the name inside this list. Immediately I enter my age, you should put my age inside this list. Immediately I enter my state, you should put my state inside this list. How does it work? In order for you to make it work, this is how you do it. You have to say Details, that's the name of your list. Details of a person dot append. Append is the statement that we use to put something inside a list. Append what? Now I'll tell it append name. Whatever the person enter as his name, append it to that list. Now you can see my AI is completing it. The next one, details of a person dot append age, and then details of a person dot append state. So now let's do something. Let me put those details. Okay, at the ending, let's print the list. Let's print the list. Details of a person. That's the name of my list. So for now, we've not yet added anything. We've not yet added anything. Okay, let me just assume I've not put anything. Let me assume. Now in programming, whenever I put something empty like this, it means it's empty. I've not added anything. So let's try and run it. You see that the list, you see, it's just those quotation marks it puts. Nothing is inside. It's empty. So now let me start putting items inside. So my name, let me assume, as I'm using the application, I decided to provide my name. And then I decided to provide my age. And then I decided to provide my state. Now, when I print, here when we created the list, it was empty. Now, after ID, if I create it, you see the list is no longer empty. This list now is no longer empty. I've added items to it. So that is how you create a list that you can be adding things to it. So on your own, you can build an application that can, at first it is empty, but along the line, it will be collecting people's record and is adding items to them. So that is how we work with append. So you see this person 1.append 5.7. Remember when we created person 1 up here, JC, this person 1, we just say JC 27 Kaduna, length 3. But I decided to add something at the end. And mind you, whatever you append is always added at the end. It's always added at the end of your list. So immediately I append. This person 1 that has 3 things, you see that here, because I appended something. Now, mind you, you always call the name of the list first before you write dots, then append. It's not that you say append, then the name of the list. No. The name of the list, dot, append, and then you tell it what it is to add to this list. That is how it works. So you can see when I say person 1 dot append 5.7. Now you can see when I printed person 1, you can see it is no longer 3. It's become 4 now with the inclusion of 5.7. And then there's also another way to append something to a list using another statement called insert. Okay, I think someone wants to talk, right?
Yeah, I
Okay,
just wanted to know something. I noticed like in that details you put that dash in between. Is
yeah.
it necessary that we must
No,
have
no,
to
no, 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 no.
include those
It's not
that?
necessary. That dash, but it's not necessary. I'm just writing it so that my this thing will be clear. You know, if I should write, okay, let me show you. If I say details of a person, even you reading it, you won't understand what I wrote here.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
understand? So I just wrote this dash so that when you are reading it, it should look easy to understand. It's a variable. You know, the way me I would name my variable will be different from yours. It will be different from yours. So that's how me I usually do my variable naming. That's my own style. Just because details of a person is more or less like a statement, not a variable that we've been doing before. You know, all the variables we've been doing before is just one. We'll just say maybe I didn't mean I call it details. 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 You know, this one is straightforward. This one is straightforward. But because I want to make it, I want to give it more meaning such that when another person picks it, it can be able to understand, yeah, this is what this variable is talking about. So that is why I wrote it in form of a sentence, details of a person. But because I can't join it, and again, in variable name, you cannot give space. I cannot say details of a person like this. You can see it's even highlighting red for me. Why? Because it only takes this one to be the variable. This space automatically de-associate everything. So in order for you to make it reasonable and easy to understand, you always use underscore. Me, I usually use this underscore. So That is why I did that. So I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yeah, it's
All
clear.
right. Okay. Thank you, sir. So any other question? I think there's no question again. All right. So we're almost coming to an end for what we'll be doing, because the next thing left variable is function isn't that difficult like that. Okay. That is how you define a list and then add items. And then, okay, I said the first way to add items is to use append, but append only adds to the end. Okay, what if you have a specific location you want to add something? Okay, let's assume say JC is at index 0, 27 is at index 1, Kaduna is at index 2, 5.7 is at index 3. Okay, let's assume this 27, I don't like its position here. I don't like its position there. And then I want to change the position of this 27. I want to bring it at the beginning. So, if I'm taking it to the beginning, it means it's the one becoming index 0 now. Remember, I told you anything at the beginning is index 0. So, in order for me to change that, you can use the insert statement. So, I will say person 1, which is the name of my list, dot insert. Now, insert accepts two things. The first thing, you tell him the position you want to put that item. So I said index 0 because it's at the beginning. And then I want to put 27 there. So immediately I run it. Okay, sorry. The statement, my spelling is not correct. Now, I executed it, right? Now let's check index 1. You see that index 1 has changed. You can see 27 came to the beginning. But this other 27 was not removed. How do we remove that? In order for us to remove that, there is another statement called pop. So I will say person 1.pop. Who do I want to pop? I want to pop this other 27 here. So what is the index? Let's calculate the index of that 27. This guy is at index 0. This guy is at index 1. This guy is at index 2. So I want to pop the item that is at index 2. So I'll write the index here. So immediately we pop it. So let's make reference to, let's call person 1 now and see what happens. You can see 27 is no longer there. So we have removed it from there. So I've spoken about 4 things. I've shown you how to append, that is how to add something. I use 2 methods. I say you can use insert. You use insert if you are sure of the position. But if position doesn't matter, use append. But when we are doing machine learning, you mostly use append. You hardly even use insert. You hardly use it. You always use append. So I spoke about 2, and then I spoke about pop. Pop is used to remove something if you know the position. And then what if you don't know the position, you just want to remove it? You use remove. So you can see, let's print our person 1 again. Our person 1 is 27 JC Kaduna, right? Let's assume I want to remove Kaduna. I no longer want Kaduna in my listing. I don't need to specify the location. I just need to just say remove Kaduna for me. Person 1 dot remove Kaduna. Let's run it. Now if we should print it, you can see Kaduna has been removed. So that is how lists work. So once we start doing the machine learning properly, you see the application of all these things. Because sometimes we create lists, we add items, we remove them, or we drop them, things like that. So that is how the list work. So I believe list is clear, right? No problem. Everyone has a good understanding of what list is all about, right? Okay. So let's proceed to dictionary now. Now, just like I explained earlier, I said dictionary, what differentiates a dictionary from list is number 1, a dictionary uses a curly bracket. That's number 1. And then secondly, a dictionary tells you what the list is all about. Remember, I told you in a list, I just wrote JC27 Kaduna. It doesn't make sense. I had to tell you, JC is the name, 27 is the age, Kaduna is the state. I manually told you. But a dictionary will tell you what each item is all about. I said that earlier. And I said dictionary Those items that tells you what the value is all about, we call them keys. Keys, keys. Then the item that you are holding is called value. So the same way now, every dictionary, a combination of the key and value of a dictionary, we call them items. A combination of keys and value. Now, let me show you something. Now, if you check for a dictionary, you can see here I put dot dot. Now, dot dot means you are trying to map this name, this is its value. So, if you are using a dictionary, you must map them and use this dot dot to map them. After you finish defining this one, then comma, before you go to the next person, age, dot dot, 27. That is, you are saying this is the key, this is the value. So that dot dot means you are trying to define the value. You are trying to tell him the value that this other variable is holding. Then once you finish, before you put comma, and then you go to the next one. So in a dictionary, you must put the key first, followed by dot dot, and then the value before you go to the next thing that is supposed to be in the dictionary. So please always be mindful of that. So in a dictionary, I said these guys, we call them keys. Then the ones after the dot dot, we call them values. So I said we have keys, we have values. And then a combination of keys and values, we call them items. A combination of both. So the same way we did for list, how can you read through a dictionary? The same way. But the difference is a dictionary in a list, we just say for X, we access only one thing. Why? Because the items inside a list, they are 1 1 separated by comma. But for a dictionary, they are not 1 1. They have a key and a value. So they are 2 2. So you will have to define two variables. I can say variable A to represent key. The first variable always represents your key. Then the second variable represents your value. I'll come again. Variable A represents key, that's first item. Variable B represents value. Mind you, it mustn't be A and B. You can use anything, but make sure they are 2. Then you can say for A and B in, let's say person 1 dot items. You have to put items. Remember, I told you the items is a collection of keys and value. So if you didn't put these dot items, it will try to assume that this dictionary is a list, and it will be telling you there's an error. I can't see what you are talking about. So whenever you write the dictionary, you must write these dot items. Why? Because these dot items is a collection of keys and values. It's a collection of both your A and your B. So now I'll say print comma B. Now the A means it will print the key and then it will print the value. Let me add another thing to make it more fancy, like this. Okay. Sorry, I didn't complete my quotation mark. So it will print out the key and then it will tell us the value. So let's run it. Okay, sorry, I didn't run this cell. So he's trying to access that other list that we created. So I will have to run this. Now you can see it brought out name and then it's a JC. That's this A, which is the key. Look at them. Name, age, state. Then this equal to that is in the middle. Look at them. And then lastly, which is B, that's these values here. Look at them, JC 27 Kaduna. So whenever you're working with a dictionary, you have to be careful. Unlike the other one, you cannot say for X in person 1. No. You have to say for X, Y or A, B or anything. Why? Because they are in 2. One represents key, one represents value. And then whenever you write the name of the dictionary, unlike in a list, once you write the name of the list, that's all. This one, if you write, you must put dot items, because the dot items, it will help you to differentiate between the key and the value. So I believe clear on that. So if you have to do it for person 2 also, I'll just go here, change it to person 2, I run it, that's all. Now, how do you add items to a dictionary? For list, we say append, but for a dictionary, it is different. In order to add item to any dictionary, the first thing is to write the name of the dictionary. We have been using person 1, for example, so let's use. Then you give the index. Sorry, not the index, sorry, the key. But you use the same square bracket that you are using for list. you have to write the key. Now, what is the key? Let's assume this is my person one that has JC. I want to add my height there to this dictionary. So I need to write that height, which is the key. Remember, I told you the key tells you what you are trying to talk about. So you say person one, I'm trying to create a new key called height. Then this should be the value. What should be the value? Let's say 1.65. That is the value, and then I run it. So the moment I print person one now, you see that person one has a new item joined. You can see after name, age, state, we have another key and its value. So unlike a list, if you are working with a dictionary, this is how you add items. This is how you add items. And then if you want to delete something, if you want to remove something, you say del. Del stands for delete. Delete person one. Let's say I want to remove the height. Now I've deleted it. Now once I print person one, you will not see height there again. You can see height is gone. So this is how you add, this is how you delete or remove. So I think that is that on dictionary. So all these things we use them. So the last thing we'll talk about before we go is function. Now all these things that we are doing, they are stressful because there are some time when you be writing a code and then you want to, okay, like for instance this okay, the former place I created here, this code that I wrote here, let me copy it out. And then let me show you. Okay, no, let me take it to a function. Now what is a function? A function is a block of code that you can use it more than one time. That's what we call a function. A function is a block of code that can be used more than once. That is what we call a function. So now let's assume I'm trying to add all these things in my code. So let's assume now the person, now this one that I wrote is only once that can be entered. Okay, let's assume now I want a person, different people to be using this thing in the application. One way that can make it easy for me is using a function. Now a function is a block of code that you can use it plenty times. Anytime you want to use it, you don't need to go and you don't need to be calling the function again. You don't need to be writing the code. Highest, you just write the name of the function, the thing will repeat automatically by itself. So a typical example now here, this first example, before we come back to what I want to talk about, this code here, I want you to greet somebody using the person's name. I want you to greet, if I should write my name, you should tell me print hello, I am JC. That is what I want you to print. But if another person writes a different name, if I'm writing it manually, I need to go and write the code again and then tell it, okay, if the person changes his name, go and change the name there too. That one will be stressful. So a simple way for me to do it is to use a function. Now, how do you write a function? Just like I said, if you are using selection, if it's used for selection, you always start with if. If you are using loop, you start with for. If you are doing function, you start with def. A function always starts with def. So let's assume after writing this def, then you write the name that you want to give your function. Just like you are giving variable names, you also give your function a name. Just like you are giving variable name, you also give function a name. So the name of my function is, let's assume I call the name of my function greeting. And then what I want inside this bracket, anything that is inside bracket programming, we call it parameter. Now, what is parameter? Parameter are the number of informations that you want your function to collect. So back to what I said I want it to greet me using my name. So that name is the parameter that I want my function to collect. So you write the name of the parameter that you want him to collect. So after that, you put your dot and then you press next. Now, what do I want you to print name? I say whenever someone enters his name, you should print hello welcome, and then the name of the person. Now, why did I write name? Because name is what I wrote here. So whatever you write up here should be what should be here. So now, how will I do it? Now, in order for me to use it now, what I need to do, I don't need to go and start writing this code afresh. I'll just call this greeting that is up, I'll write it. Greeting. And then I said this greeting needs a parameter which I call name. And let's give an example. Let's say I want you to write hello, welcome, JC. So I need to write the name that he should work with. So if I say greeting JC, if I should run it, you'll see it will print hello, welcome, JC. If I should change here to another name, let me say Paul. You see it's writing welcome, Paul. So I can write this greeting. I can write it for 200. All I just need to do, I don't need to go and start rewriting this code. All I just need to do is just to be calling the code greeting James. So like that, you just be writing it. So there are some situations that you will use a particular portion of code plenty times. So the moment you have already defined the function here, just like you define a variable here too, you define the function. The moment you have defined it, you don't need to go and start doing it every instance. All you need to do is to just call it and then pass it the parameter you want to give it. Now, mind you, there are some situations that a parameter doesn't have any value. Here can be empty. So if it is empty, you just need to call it. You don't need okay, before I remove that, let's run these ones first. Okay, because I changed here. Now you can see it said hello Paul, hello welcome Peter, hello welcome James. So now let's assume there's no parameter for it. Let's assume there's no parameter. So if there's no parameter, I need to remove the parameter. I just want you to greet. That's all. So if there is now, since I remove parameter, if I should leave these parameters here, it will raise error for me when we run it. You can see it's raising error. Why? Because I said the function did not collect any parameter, and me, I'm providing it a parameter. So we need to remove all these parameters, and then you see it will also run. So one thing with function is whenever you create them, if they have parameter, whenever you want to call them, make sure you provide that parameter. And then if they don't have a parameter, there's no need to call any parameter. So that was what I did here. This one has two parameters. So here, the one I did the other time has just one parameter. If it has two parameters, it can be A and B. Let me show you a practical example of the one that has two parameters. Maybe I want to write a function that adds two numbers, A and B. This one has two parameters. So I can say, let's say sum is equal to A plus B. That is, you should add A and B. Then we can now say print sum. So if we want to call it, all we need to do, we will say add, and then we provide it with the two numbers. Let me say 4, 5. Exactly the way you wrote this your A, B, but now you provide it with numbers rather, and then run. You can see it printed the sum 4 plus 5. 4 plus 5 it gave us 9. The same thing I can just change here like that, and then run it. You see it brought this up. So this is how function works. So it's simple. So all these are illustration of functions, and then this one is the same. That function, that way we printed before, that check a list and then print out all the numbers, is the same thing. It's that same code I repeated, but this time around I used a function to write it instead of straightforward the way we wrote it before. I used a function to write it out. So I think with that, I've come to the end of today's class.